From Washington, this is VOA News. I'm David Forrest reporting the G7 warns Russia. Leaders from the group of 7 leading industrialized nations say they will stiffen economic sanctions against Russia unless the Russians fully implement a ceasefire in eastern Ukraine. Speaking after the G7 summit in Germany, U.S. President Barack Obama said it comes down to a choice by Russian President Vladimir Putin.
He's got to make a decision. Does he continue to wreck his country's economy and continue Russia's isolation in pursuit of a wrong-headed desire to recreate the glories of the Soviet Empire?
On another topic, the president said the coalition fighting the Islamic State does not have a complete strategy because it needs more commitment and recruitment from Iraq. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan called on his country's political parties to act responsibly in the aftermath of elections Sunday that crushed his ruling majority in parliament. Dorian Jones reports.
The Turkish president has not spoken publicly on his AK party setback, but in a written statement he declared the nation's opinion stands above all else and that all parties should assess the situation realistically. Mr. Erdogan's conciliatory tone was in stark contrast to his lambasting opposition parties and their leaders in the lead-up to the vote. Dorian Jones, Istanbul.
A UN commission today reported human rights violations have been committed under the authority of the Eritrean government. The UN Commission of Inquiry on Eritrea listed the country's president as among those mainly responsible for the abuses. The commission says it was unable to visit Eritrea and received no response from the government. This is VOA News. An Iranian court has resumed the espionage trial of jailed Washington Post reporter Jason Rezaian. Rezaian has denied allegations against him presented part of his defense on Monday at a closed-door hearing at the Revolutionary Court in Tehran. Rezaian's lawyer said his client has been charged with espionage for allegedly collecting confidential information and handing it to hostile governments, writing a letter to U.S. President Barack Obama, and acting against national security. President Barack Obama says the United States is going to have to be much more aggressive when it comes to cybersecurity. The president refused to say who he believes is behind the recent hacking of U.S. government computers. And on that subject, the U.S. Army says it temporarily took down its website after some content was compromised in a hacking incident. A group aligned with the government of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad claimed responsibility. The so-called Syrian Electronic Army boasted of the hack on Twitter and shared an image of an anti-U.S. message posted just before the website went completely dark. Burundi's Electoral Commission has recommended pushing back the dates for national elections. The National Independent Election Commission proposed that legislative elections take place June 26th, followed by the presidential election on June 15th, and a senatorial vote on July 24th. The proposal comes following the unrest sparked by President Pierre Nkurunziza's decision to seek a third term. Opponents say a third term would violate the Constitution. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled Monday that U.S. presidents, not Congress, have the exclusive power to recognize foreign nations. The court overturned a law that would have permitted Americans born in Jerusalem to list Israel as their birthplace. Justices ruled 6-3 that Congress overstepped its authority when it approved the law in 2002 over the objections of then-President George W. Bush. Palestinians claim Jerusalem as their city. The South Korean Health Ministry has announced that the death of a 6th person from Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, or MERS. It said the victim is an 80-year-old man who tested positive for the virus while being treated for pneumonia. The ministry says 87 people in South Korea have been infected with the disease. Star South African runner Oscar Pistorius could be eligible for parole by August. That comes less than a year after he was convicted in the shooting death of his girlfriend, Riva Steenkamp. South African media cite correctional officials and a member of the Pistorius family as confirming that he will be placed under house arrest. From the VOA News Center in Washington, I'm Dave DeForest.
That's the latest world news from VOA.